Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Alright, guys, in this thread, we shared the worst of our nightmares or creepy dreams.
I only ever had one true nightmare, I guess. I had the dream several times at the age of about 8 years old. I was in my house and it was growing dark outside. My mother asked me to go outside and close the gate. I went out to do what I was told, during which I looked around to notice everything outside of my back garden was pitch black, as if the world ended after my garden. Suddenly I was jolted by my mother's voice behind me saying,
"What are you doing out here? Why did you leave the door open?"
I tried to explain, "But you told me to close the gate?" At which point my mother became furious with me, repeating constantly,
"You've let him in. You've gone and let him in. Get back in the house now."
Doing as I was told, I followed my mother back into the house, at which point she told me to close the door, so I turned my back to close the door, and when I turned to face her, she had vanished. I walked through to the living room of my house to find my father talking with my older sister. He asked me why I was awake at such a late time, and I replied, "Mum asked me to close the gate." Suddenly he was furious with me too.
You went outside? Did you leave the door open? Don't tell me you let him in. You did. You let him in.
Suddenly my father got up and ran past me through to the back door that I had just closed. I attempted to follow, but when I reached the back door, the door was closed and my father and mother were nowhere to be seen. I turned back towards the living room to be greeted by my sister, who asked me where our parents had gone to. I replied, "They said I let him in. Who is he?" Suddenly my sister became furious with me, saying what my mother and father had said.
"You let him in? You let him in. Why did you let him in?"
And then she too ran to the back door. I tried to follow, but when I reached the back door, she was gone as well. This time I stepped up to the back door, which I had closed and locked myself, and looked out of the window panel in the door, to see my mother, father and sister, all dead in my back garden, not bloody corpses or such, just the life drained out of them, lying still and dead on the ground. I ran upstairs to my room, at which point I started to hear noises and fear totally overcame me. A voice kept repeating the same phrase over and over.
"It's me, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me."
And the tone of voice kept rising and falling. Slowly the voice got closer and louder, as if coming up the stairs. I tried to close my bedroom door, but my door wouldn't move. Suddenly he was there, but it was my family, standing in front of me, my mother, father, and sister. They all, at the same time, began to talk.
Why are you up here? Did you open the back door? You let him in. You let him in.
Then I woke up.
I don't often have nightmares. I have dreams where scary things happen, like I'm being chased, but I'm not scared in those dreams. I think they're fun. But anyway, a dream I recently had that was close to seriously frightening me. I'm in this huge, brightly lit room. Tiles on the floor, all shiny and such. I head down a hallway, and it starts to get darker. The floors and walls are all dingy, and it's gotten smaller too. I'm now in a low-ceilinged hallway, and on either side of me there are jail cells. The cells are full of dead people, mummified sort of. Their eyes are gone, and their mouths are open. I'm not so sure all of them are criminals in there. I see both men and women. Soon, I realize that these dead people are moving. They stand up and begin to lumber after me. At first, I think I'm okay, because they're in the cells and I'm out in the hallway. Then I see that all the doors are open. I frantically run down the hallway, closing and locking every door I see. I'm not fast enough. Some of the dead people have escaped, and are coming down the hallway after me. I lock myself into a cell, hoping to keep my pursuers away. But too late, I see that the cell is not empty. There are animated corpses in here with me. I fling open the door and run down the hall, still being followed. Eventually, I reach another large, bright room. There are people there, but they're all frozen like statues. I wander among them for a while, up an escalator, all the while being chased by the corpses. Then I wake up.
I had a dream where I was in this really cozy-looking apartment building and I was in a room with a friendly couple. This guy wanted to give me a hug and I did, but suddenly he takes his hand and smothers my face and I feel something burrowing into my neck. After that, these demons began to chase me and I had no choice but to jump out of the window 10 stories up. Then I woke up facing the hallway, and my eyes were blurry so the nightlight out in the hall looked like 2 orbs. I felt really lethargic and my neck was really sore. Fighting off an unusual spell of lethargy, I made my way to the bathroom, but then the demons came out of nowhere and attacked. I awoke again, in the same position with the exact same view, facing the hallway with the nightlight blurred into 2 orbs. And the demons attacked again when I got up. And again, 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 and each time, the thing that was implanted in my neck grew larger, as if about to gestate. And when I woke up for real, I was still in the same position, facing the hall and with my vision blurred so that the nightlight looked like 2 orbs. It took a long shower for me to be sure I was back in reality. My neck was still sore though.
Following is a recurring dream that I've had on and off for years, and I always wake up in a frozen state. I guess you could call it night terrors, I'm not sure though. All I know is that when I wake up, I get the sensation of my entire body being dipped slowly into a large body of water. I can feel the waterline like rising across my skin and I hear water draining in my ears. I'm in the top floor of my house, and I am vaguely aware that my house is flooding. There is black water up to my ankles at one point in time, and then I just go about my business like nothing's happening. Later, I realize that it is to my knees, waist, etc. The water level keeps rising, but I keep ignoring it. When it finally reaches my head, I start to kind of mess around with it. I figure out that I can breathe under the water and I can open my eyes without them hurting and things like that. I can basically live in the water if I want to, things are just darker in the water. Then, at the end of the dream, I realize that my house has fucking flooded and I'm horrified. I start to swim around in disbelief, and cue the terrible aforementioned waking up state.
The guy who sits next to me in my English class has some pretty fucked up dreams. I'll try to retell this one as well as I can. In the dream, he had this strange itching feeling in his ear. He went through most of the day with this odd sensation, until finally he started to pick at it. He felt something squirming in the orifice, and was able to clasp it between his thumb and forefinger. Slowly, he pulled out a large spider dangling from its held leg. It was nearly the size of its hand, covered in globs of earwax that were dripping from its desperately grasping limbs. Before long, he felt the same strange tingling in his other ear. This one is mine. I have a friend to whom I haven't really talked in years. In my dream, he was shooting hours of footage of horrible gore and archiving it all on tapes with black paper cases. Cats getting brutalized, people being shot in the face, tied to chairs and bleeding and crying as they were awaiting their deaths, people covered in millions of tiny cuts laying on the ground, corpses rotting in corners in hours of blood and slaughter and death, each scene more graphic and horrible than the last. He had a bookcase completely stuffed with these black tapes, all crooked as if he forced handfuls of them in there at the same time. It was all part of some larger project he refused to talk about.
Dunno. All I seem to have for years, or remember at least, are nightmares, bad dreams. Kinda gotten used to it, so I don't really bother trying to remember them. Suppose I could slap one that sticks out down, it's not much though. And towards the end, a question to you fellows about your own dream experiences. My friends and I are sidling along a fairly steep rock face alongside the Hiwassee River. Didn't really look like it, but I just remember thinking it was as such, and it's about midday. No one's around for miles, and there's forest at the top of the slope, and on the other side of the water another sheer slope with more woods. Anyway, after some time, the portion of the slope one of my buds is on just kinda gives in. Like a big portion just caves in very quickly and quietly to form an opening into a cave passageway, with a stream running through it, wall to wall, parallel to the river outside. The odd thing about it is, yes, it's running, but it seems like the entire cave is running, as though it were some three-dimensional video were running just beyond the hole. But I digress, back to the incident. The slope caves, and my bud goes with it. The caved rock for some odd reason floats, and he tries to get over towards it, and myself and the other fellow with us jump down to the rocks, so as not to lose him in the odd moving cave. About this time, we notice a few bones in the water, mostly human, but one odd one in particular I recall looked like the jawbone of an ass. That odd one began floating towards him, and met with his arm. He was instantly dragged under the water, and a spout of this odd blood oil ichor spewed forth from his previous location, accompanied by his agonized screams. The rock we were on slams into the wall of the cavern, tossing us off. A similar occurrence with the bones occurs with my other friend, and I start to freak out. As the cave begins to go around a bend, taking us away from the precious light of the hole, I notice a skull begin advancing towards me. Then I wake up. Like I said, nothing special, or even logical enough to be scary after awakening, but it was odd enough to stick out in my mind. Okay, my question that I mentioned, in your dreams, has there ever come a time when you really want to, or have to scream, but when you try, you just can't? It's like, you just don't have the air to do it, and all that comes out is a raspy, help, or some such, and you can't seem to draw enough breath afterwards for another attempt?
Well, I get these dreams always. I'm coming home. Obviously it's dark outside. I reach the stairs into my flat. It's on the 4th floor, and start going up. Suddenly, I hear the doors screech on the 1st floor. I continue walking up the stairs, when I hear footsteps, someone's following me up. I rush to reach my door on the 4th floor, then the sudden feeling of everything slowing down occurs. I start to run real slow, and I hear the footsteps rapidly beating the stairs, the feeling that it's coming up. I see a shadow, but suddenly, I bust out of the slow-mo and run to my door, just to see that before I close it, the thing manages to get his hand in between the door and grab my hand. It's pretty straightforward after that. It's time for what I do in most of my dreams. I break loose and jump through the window to find myself woken up.
I just had a freakish dream, which isn't really normal for me, that actually made me not want to go back to sleep for fear I would continue along the same lines of the dream I had. It probably won't bother many others, but the idea of zombies freakin' creeps me out. This is probably why I've never watched any zombie movie other than the original Dawn of the Dead. Something about walking corpses staggering after you non-stop before biting you and turning you into one of their own because you can't kill the damn things without a gun to blow its head off really freaks me out. I sometimes think, I wonder what would happen if I woke up one day and practically everyone was turning into a zombie. I check my exits. I pull the kukri knife my grandpa loaned me a little closer and I snuggle down into my pillow with the final thought of, thank God that will never happen. It's a really stupid fear. Yes, I know they're not real and never will be real, but it crops up in my head sometimes and I start thinking about survival techniques. So my dream has me being called out of my old house that I grew up in by my grandpa and he wants to show me something in the sky. I walk out and look up and I can see every star in the sky. A really nice, clear night that I don't often get to see because of the dim light that usually bounces off from the rest of the city. Well, this man-sized doll made from hay came out of nowhere and started attacking me. Papa said to fend it off because it couldn't hurt me, so I did, and I was really doing well. I was like, "Oh fuck you, you stupid gigantic hay bale. I used to toss stuff like you around when I was a kid," and continued to just rip hay out so it would dwindle down. That was when the zombies appeared. I don't know why they appeared, I just know they did. A whole crowd of them started moving very quickly for me with this crazy song that was being sung like,
Hey, come with me, we'll rip you apart and make you bleed. We're dangerous and contagious, and like to feed. And soon you'll be just like me.
Not quite what it was, but I couldn't remember how it began. It was dark and cheery at the same time, and I have no idea why it was being sung like I was in a movie. Lol anyway, so I run. Papa's screaming at me to keep running no matter what. My mom's screaming at me to come through the back, but I can't turn past the crowd headed for me to get to the back door that easily, so I keep running. I run through the path behind the old house that leads to the next street over. I run all the way to what I think is the 7-Eleven, but it turns out that I end up in downtown Austin and in what was supposed to be a dorm on the UT campus. People are talking and chatting, trying to strike up a conversation with me as I look for ways out, and I notice some people are already showing signs of turning. I see more of the zombies headed for me and start running again through the place like it was a maze. I realize then that the damn thing is spread not through a bite, but by mere contact, so I'm busy trying to make sure that they can't touch me now. This ends badly. While trying to get my ass out of an area that's been demolished, I get caught and I get turned and I get shunted around on a merry little school bus where we jump out and turn more people to be like us. Then, there's a cure and we're saved. I call home on my cell phone and say I'm coming home after so long as a zombie, and for some reason I'm in a car with 3 other people. One gets out to get gas, and like any bad horror film, a dead person hits the top of the car and I hit the lock. I see a bunch of heads in a school bus and some police wrangling the dead person away from the car. The person that had left gets in and looks like a zombie, holds up a finger and says, "Shish," and starts the car while singing. Normal for me. That actually made me not want to go back to sleep for fear I would continue along the same lines of the dream I had.
Okay, I'm not the best storyteller and my English isn't the best either, but here is my dream. I had this dream where I was standing on a local parking lot. In front of me was a door with a really long corridor behind it with a single door at its end. So I walked down the corridor till I reached the door, which I realized was the back entrance to my grandma's kitchen. I tried to open the door, but I wasn't able to, so I started knocking. Somehow I couldn't really knock on the door. My hands always stopped a few centimeters before they reached it. I knew I had to get in there and started to panic. I tried harder, even tried to kick the door in and started screaming for someone to open. And suddenly the door opened. What follows happened in just a few seconds. Behind it wasn't my grandma's kitchen, it was a small room approximately 2 meters wide, 3 meters deep, 3 meters high. The walls were covered with white tiles, 10 by 10 centimeters, with black joints, a bright light coming from somewhere above. In this room was my whole family, parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and they seemed to be scared to death. They turned towards me, started screaming in a high-pitched, eerie voice, like fingernails on a chalkboard but much louder, transformed into clay like unhuman figures, and then fell into pieces. Then I woke up.
I once had a dream where I was in the bed of a pickup truck, and saw 2 guys in the front. The driver said something to me, so I got out, and went to the west, the truck facing north, into a tall grassed field. As I proceeded north, I walked past these rows and rows of corpses, as if they were an audience to something at this house I was heading towards. As I got to the doorstep of the house, I turned around, and at the front of the rose, I saw an old-fashioned casket standing up. A view space on it had this poster for a circus on it, and it dropped open, knocking the casket open, revealing a skeletal bride, clothed but no hair or skin or anything, still holding her bouquet. I turned and entered the house. It was a ranch-style home on the outside, but as I entered, it became a barn on the inside, with light streaming in from the gaps in the wood, though the lower walls were lined with corpses, some standing, some laying on their sides on the wall like they had been nailed there. As I proceeded through the barn house, I saw my cat, and she looked as scared as I felt at the moment, standing near the front door. As I went through this door, I was outside again. To the east was this dark, black forest, with death standing in front of it. The truck had pulled up to line up with the house, but I think it was empty. And for some reason, if I remember correctly, Death was unarmed. I knew for some reason I had to fight him, but I woke up. The image of Death was so strong that I had a really bad sensation for about half an hour from the northeast direction of which I saw him in the dream.
In my dream, I woke up from a nightmare in my own bed. I'm scared silly, and have a cold sweat, so I go into the bathroom to splash some water on my face. I know my way around the house pretty well, so I don't bother turning any lights on. In the bathroom, just above the sink, is a mirror. I don't pay it any attention as I go in, I just run some water and rub my face. Then I notice blood on my hands, and in the water dripping off me. I look up to the mirror, and I see that my reflection's eyes are missing, blood slowly seeping from the ragged sockets. My lips have been ripped off back to where they join the gums, and it looks like my teeth have been pulled out and replaced the wrong way up, so the roots protrude from the gums. They're covered in blood too. Then I realize what I have to do. I slowly walk back to my bedroom, to find myself lying asleep in bed, my appearance entirely normal. A hobby of mine is jewelry making, and my tools are in my room, one of which is basically a heavy metal rod with a grip at one end used for sizing rings. I pick this up, and smash it into my sleeping self's head until the skull is completely shattered. Then I get dressed in my best evening suit, bow tie, waistcoat and all that. I walk downstairs into the hall, and look at myself in the long mirror that's on the wall, so I can see my entire reflection dressed up, still with the brutalized face. I carefully adjust my bow tie, so it looks perfect, and then I look myself in the eyes. I can tell that this other version of me is watching me looking out at his reflection. And then, despite the absence of lips and eyes, he grins and winks at me. Then I woke up from the nightmare, in my own bed. I didn't get back to sleep.
I had a nightmare that took place in Disney World. I was 5 years old. I had apparently wandered away from my parents and couldn't find them anywhere. Nobody would help me look for them no matter how much I asked. Then a guy in one of those Mickey Mouse suits came up to me saying he could help and asked for me to follow him. Being a naive little kid, I did. He led me to a manatee tank underground in a living seas exhibit. Nobody else was around and most of the lights were off. There was a weird red light coming from somewhere inside the tank. Suddenly, the Mickey guy grabbed me and held my head underwater. I thrashed around and screamed, but he was too strong. Eventually, I felt myself go limp and started sinking. Everything went completely dark except for the red light at the bottom of the tank. The light eventually started emitting whispers from it, though I couldn't understand what was being said. And then I woke up.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.